Chris Miles is here on the Fearless Flipping podcast, and he's teaching you how to take control of your money and to say, screw the financial advisors. I'm taking my destiny into my own hands. Make sure that if you're watching on YouTube, you subscribe, comment, and like. And if you are on the podcast, you're reviewing, rating, give us that 5 stars. Now, let's get to the show. If you want financial freedom, time freedom, and want to leave a legacy for generations to come, you probably have heard real estate investing is the place to do that. How do you get started? What do you have to do? When's the right time? If you are looking for those answers, you've come to the right place. My name's Kyle Stanley, and this is Fearless Flipping. My mission is to help you learn this business and conquer real estate investing. Hey guys, welcome into the show. You're here with me, Kyle Stanley, and we're going to pretty much just jump right into this thing. Chris Miles is the host of the Chris Miles Money Show. He's got a podcast that I definitely suggest that you listen to after this next 30 minutes of hearing all of his knowledge and the fact that he's retired twice before the age of 39. Yes, you heard me right. Retired twice before the age of 39. You're definitely going to want to subscribe to his show. So let's take it away with Chris Miles. Hey guys, welcome into the show. Before we get to our awesome guest here today, I just want to make sure that you know that today's episode is brought to you by our Airbnb profit calculator. You know, you're a savvy investor, you love making money in your sleep, but you also wish you were able to find a way to bring in more than just $200 per door, right? Well, have you thought about Airbnb yet? In a world where short-term rentals are becoming the main way that people choose to travel, it's time to capitalize on this trend. People like me are making over $1,000 per door. That's right, $1,000 per door in Airbnb. Download the Airbnb profit calculator for free, absolutely free, to start evaluating your properties and see what you could potentially make. Go to fearlessflipping.com/Airbnb host to download this free calculator and learn how to get into Airbnb. Now, I am excited today to bring you Chris Miles. He is the founder of Money Ripples and the Chris Miles Money Show. He's also got a podcast. That's exactly what it's called, the Chris Miles Money Show. And so this guy right here, he speaks our language. So what I want to really just pump to you guys today is that Chris is doing a lot of different things in the space of passive income. And so we want to hear a little bit more, even beyond real estate, what he's doing today. But Chris, thanks so much for joining us here from Salt Lake City.
Hey, it's such a pleasure, Kyle. Thanks.
Awesome. So Chris, first things first, just kind of bring us up to speed. Give us your story, because it's not even necessarily that you're in real estate. That's part of like the passive income model that you are with and also that you're teaching. But really, you're in all sorts of different avenues of passive income and helping people to reach that. So I really want my audience to really hear where you're from, what you're doing, how you're helping people. Let's just kind of like take it back to the beginning of when you first got into this whole thing.
You bet. I first started out, I grew up near Portland, Oregon. I was there until I went to college. And then during my college journey, I was getting to the point where I wanted to be a business consultant, right? And I thought, I should have real life business experience if I'm going to actually consult people how to do stuff. And so I dropped out of college to figure out like, okay, what kind of business can I create? And the business that came up first was being a financial advisor. And little did I know, outside of all the, the tests you've got to pass to get licenses and things like that, I didn't realize they hired anybody off the street.
Is that true?
Yeah. You don't have to have like a degree or anything like that. It's basically you just got to pass your licenses and
take all my money and do something good with it. And you don't have a degree. That's great.
Yeah. I was kind of like, if you remember the movie, The Wedding Singer with Adam Sandler.
Oh yeah. Love that one.
So you remember when he was like, he was trying to get a job. He was trying to quit being a wedding singer. He was trying to get a job. He went into the bank and he's like, well, what do you know about money? He's like, well, I've got a jar with money on top of my fridge. I'd like to have more in it. And that's where you come in, sir. Right. That was kind of like me, sadly enough, in the early 2000s. I started about just after the 9/11 stuff. Right. So during the Y2K recession. But I got into it and I actually really enjoyed it. So I dropped out of college, didn't go back to finish my sociology or business degree or anything like that. And I kept doing that. But after about 3 or 4 years in, right, I did it for a total of 4 years. But when I got to about that third or fourth year, I started to realize as I looked at evidence, because I like evidence. I like things to know that they work.
Sure.
And I would look at it and I was like, dang, like these people have had decades of advice, aren't that much better off than anybody else who was just guessing.
Mm.
You know, they were using advisors, but they weren't any better off. And they're still, I mean, some of them were so bitter from Y2K. They're like, oh, that guy, did he die or is he in jail? I hope so, because my money sucks. You know, like they hated the stock market, you know,
Right.
which is funny because we all forget about those times, like the 2000s. But, you know, we've been in 2010s and the market's been up pretty much the entire time, right? And people are like, oh, the market's awesome. So they're sounding like they used to sound in the 90s, which is not true. But when I looked at the real numbers, right, like what's the real stock market returning? So, like for example, when I looked at the S&P 500 the last 30 years, to date, the real rate of return of the stock market, the S&P 500, is only about 7.5%,
Right.
not 10 or 12%, like everybody's trying to convince you of, right?
Right.
And then you take out fees, you're really like 6.5%, 6% at best. You know, so when people are like trying to stuff money in their 401ks or whatever and trying to get the little teeny match on it and all that stuff, it's really not doing the trick. And you throw in inflation numbers, it's virtually impossible to retire.
Mm.
And so by the end of 2005, I'm like, well, this sucks. You know, even my dad was like, well, how do I retire? I'm like, I don't know. And he had paid off his house just like he was supposed to, right? He had, packed in the money in his 401k. And he's like, well, what do you see? I said, I see you running out of money in about 5 years.
Wow.
So hopefully you die soon. And he's like, all right, well, what's the answer? I don't know. I don't know the answer. And it's kind of like when the student is ready, the teacher appears, right?
Absolutely.
And that's when I started running into friends that were millionaires and real estate investors. And they turned me on to that whole world where I used to tell people, oh, real estate sucks. It only makes like 2-3% a year, just keeps up with inflation because, I'm looking at just house prices, not cash flow. Right. And when I started to realize it's all about the cash flow, it's not about accumulating money.
Yeah.
It changed my perspective. I'm like, This is a whole new world of possibility. And so by March of 2006, I had to quit. I'm like, I can't be here anymore and teach this crap. It doesn't work. This is better. I will never teach about money again. I will just be a real estate, like a mortgage broker, and I'll teach ballroom dancing. And so
ballroom dancing, huh?
Yeah. A little known fact, in the early 2000s, I was one of the nation's top amateur ballroom dancers.
Hey, there you go.
So
that's
kind of
awesome.
Yeah.
That sounds like a story.
That's kind of my path. And then because people kept asking me like, well, wait, because I was able to retire in 2006 with residual income streams and some passive ones. They're like, well, how'd you do it? Like, what'd you do? And so that's when I started coming out of retirement in 2007, went through the recession, because you say I retired twice by the time I was 39. It's because I went through the recession, got back in the rat race again, and then had to claw my way back out, paid off over $1 million of debt.
Wow.
Was able to retire financially independent again, just a little over 3 years ago.
Okay. So I need people to understand exactly what you're saying there, because you didn't literally retire. What it sounds like is you became financially free.
Correct.
Twice in your life. And just like any winner, if you fall down, you find a way to get back up. And that's exactly what you did. So
yep.
What was going on? What was going on pre 2008, 2009 that brought that wealth? And then what happened in 2008 and 9 to destroy that wealth? Just talk me through that really quick.
Yeah, the ambition of my 20s caught up to me in my 30s. That's what happened. So the good stuff that was happening is I created multiple streams of income. Primarily, it was the idea I got was where people might refer to nowadays as like affiliate marketing, but it was very much organic. I wasn't doing affiliate type stuff, right? So one of my friends that was a real estate investor, he was talking to me. He's like, well, Chris, do you like doing mortgages? I said, well, I like teaching people about them. I like blowing their minds, and I like, because I teach them about, cashing out money from the mortgage to go and invest. That pays their mortgage for them, right? And kind of speeds up the process. He's like, but do you like doing it? I said, I hate the paperwork part. Like, I like teaching. I like helping them design the plan, but I don't like dealing with all of the back end stuff. Well, Chris, why don't you just refer that out to somebody who does like that?
Right.
And in a scarcity world, because before that, I was the scarcity advisor that never wanted to share anything, right?
Sure.
But then I was like, I could do that. Like, that's legitimate. And so I found a guy that was at the mortgage company I was working with that was more than willing to take on those people, and we split 50-50.
Nice.
So I'd spend a half an hour or hour with people. And then next thing I know, a month or so later, I get a check for like $1,000 or $1,500. And I was like, well, that was freaking easy, and I started doing that with other companies, like even a wholesale jeweler. Like they would pay a 5% referral fee. And they were like a third to a half the cost cheaper than the typical jewelry stores. So I was creating like this massive value for people by connecting them with people, right? And I did that with a few other companies. And the next thing I know, I was making between $4,000 and $5,000 a month just from that alone.
Wow, that's great.
And then I started bringing in things like real estate and things like that to bring in other cash flow and things of that nature. So I started to diversify my streams of income. That's what I did well. What I did wrong is in 2007, I mentioned that people kept asking me how I did what I did. Sure. Well, I partnered up with a guy, a few people actually, and we created this education company to teach people how to get out of the rat race. And that was the prerequisite. You had to be out of the rat race yourself, right? So as you mentioned, being financially independent. So we're all teaching that. And our main focus were real estate investors, for one.
Okay.
Two, one of the partners said, hey, listen, Chris, I don't want to create any conflicts of interest. I want you focused and almost like working out of an office again, even though I was working from home, just having fun, right? He's like, I want you working out of an office. I need you to cut off those streams of income. That was problem number two. I should never have listened to him. I should have said, screw you. I'm keeping these streams of income.
Yep.
I'll do this on my own if I don't need you,
Sure.
But I felt like, okay, whatever, be a team player. I'll do it. And so I cut off these streams of income. I only had basically an active stream and some real estate on the side, right? And then we're focused on real estate investors. So obviously with my real estate, my focus wasn't on cash flow like it should have been.
Okay.
It wasn't like what you're talking about with like Airbnb where you're massively profitable, right? I was like, hey, can I be able to turn this thing around, flip it fast, and just get, either flip it or even worse, like, hey, I'll sell it to investor full appraisal value, get the cash out of it so I can invest it again. And then I'll just get negative cash flow on the property because I'm just moving money fast.
Right.
But just like, if you remember as a kid riding your bicycle, if some kid was a bully and stuck a stick in your spokes and you flip over the handlebars,
Oh yeah.
That's basically what happened with my real estate and other people's too, obviously. And
right.
that's what happened in the recession. I'm like, crap, now my real estate's upside down because I didn't care about the value. I was trying to just create speed, right? I was maximum leveraging everything. And I cut off streams of income, and that active business I did have were real estate investors that could no longer pay us. So it was like this perfect storm of crap that, I was now in the whole $16,000 a month.
So I think I know what the answer to this is going to be, but tell me, what was the major learning lesson? We heard everything you did wrong. Yeah. What were the things that you'd go back and redo?
Well, that's basically what I did to get out of the rat race again, right? I had to learn from that. One, like I learned it's okay to have active streams of income, and that should be kind of the main stuff coming in. One thing I didn't do that I now teach a lot of my clients to do is start tracking your money, right? Like not just your expenses. That's what people teach you from a saver scarcity mentality is be cheap, track all your expenses, spend nothing, right? But you got to track income and expenses and analyze both. Like, hey, how can I increase income? How can I be more efficient with my expenses, right? And that's what I started doing. I started actually looking, because when money's coming in so readily, you're kind of like, there's so much money coming in, I'm fine. Like there's money in the bank account, I'm good. But I didn't know I was $16,000 in the month, in the hole every month, right? Until I started seeing the credit card balances and the loan balances rise up, and as well as the savings go down. And when I saw the reality, it was scary. It really was. But that truth will set you free, right? So that was a key thing. I started actually watching my money, trying to figure out what's the most efficient use of it, right? Assets, loans, everything. Two is, definitely create those streams of income for sure. Don't build them all at once, like create them one at a time. So for example, if you're focused on Airbnb, like get really good at that. Don't venture out into other types of real estate, or even other types of passive income, or even active income, especially, right? Creating new businesses. Just focus on the one, manage it, get good at it. When you start feeling comfortable, like you got a good rhythm, then build the next stream of income, right?
Exactly.
Because I made that mistake in 2008 when I was desperate. I had 5 businesses I was actively trying to manage. And what was funny is I was making less money with 5 businesses all paying me, but they were paying me overall less than when I had it cut down to only 2. And when I got focused, then I was able to build it deeper.
Yeah, it's funny that you mentioned this because I just did a podcast on this for my formula that I call MASS, which is master, automate, and then scale. And
Yeah.
scale can also be systematized, but you really can't move on to that next business while you're trying to master another. You have to master it, you have to automate it, and then at that point when it's automated, if you can scale it, then it's time to be able to move on. So it's great to hear you say something like that. Another thing that I really like that you said, and I feel like in today's world, especially with people like Dave Ramsey, who, by the way, teaches a lot of great things. I just don't agree with his real estate advice.
Mm-hmm.
I also believe that a lot of people get really stuck on this advice that he has of, watch what you're spending, watch what you're spending, watch what you're spending. And I used to be that guy that was like 80% watching what I was spending, 20% how do I grow?
Yeah.
And then when I flipped that, I mean, literally, Chris, overnight, it was just like, oh, wow. Suddenly, like, I'm only tracking I'm still tracking my expenses, but I'm only really taking a look at that maybe once every 2 to 3 months rather than every single day. Hey, did I only spend $16 today? Okay, good. Then I'm fine,
Mm-hmm.
that made a huge difference in just my mindset was that, hey, if I play offense, if I'm like the, New England Patriots and can just crush people with tons of touchdowns and points and everything to be able to not even worry about what they're making or what they're scoring, then like that right there changes the whole ball game. Was that something you had to teach yourself? And how often do you find that people are really stuck in that mindset?
Oh, all the time. Like, I
Yeah.
appreciate you saying that because, Dave Ramsey is a great example. Like, he teaches good stuff on the budgeting type stuff,
Mm-hmm.
right? But for the most part, almost everything else, I'm kind of
Yeah.
against, what he teaches. And it's funny because my wife actually was like the first certified Dave Ramsey counselor in the state of Utah.
Oh, wow.
So I married the enemy, so to speak. I'm sleeping with the enemy, you know. But yeah, like, it was interesting because, like, and she gets this too. Like, that's why she actually moved beyond Dave Ramsey's education, because she
Mm,
said, hey, this is limiting. Like, sure, this is good if you're making 30 or 40,000 a year and you're like,
right.
making almost nothing. You got to live on a shoestring budget. But once you get beyond just that, when it comes to actually growing wealth, that's where his stuff really doesn't work. I mean, take the whole leveraging debt example, right? Like, he's
Yeah.
completely like, do not leverage debt for any purpose, any reason. You're a
That
moron if you do
advice.
it. And that's dumb. Like,
Yeah.
I mean, especially with debt can be cheap. Here's the thing. There's a spender mentality, which I get. He hates that. There's a saver mentality. Now, saver mentality is also scarcity. You don't flourish. You cannot prosper in a saver mentality. You will
Mm,
stay limited and stuck. I know this because I get a lot of Dave Ramsey like poster children that come to me later saying, okay, Chris, sure, I'm debt free, but I'm asset rich and cash poor. It's not paying me. I need monthly income or, regular cash flow coming in. And so I have to get them to reverse the training that he gave them just so that they actually retire, right?
mhm.
And that's the big thing that's missing. And so, like, with debt, like, hey, if we have something that's good, if we're a steward is that abundant mentality where you take the best in the spender and the saver and put it into one person. Because at least spenders got it right that you're supposed to use money, but they use it unwisely. But savers are always looking at, how do I use it wisely? And if you mesh it together,
Mm,
you say, what's the best use of this money to grow it, to create, like you were saying, create mass, right? Or
exactly.
I even say mas if you use Spanish for it, it's create more, you know?
That's
Um,
good. I might change that.
I know, it's like uno mas, I got to have more of that, but that's the part that really becomes awesome and exciting. And when you get, like you said, like, get more into that growth
Mhm.
mentality, playing an offense and a defense, right? You play
Yep.
both. It's really amazing what you can create. And I'll tell you, the one thing that the traditional financial advisor mentality kept me from was the cash flow mentality, right?
Mm,
I call it acceleration, where most people in the traditional space, Susie Orman's, Dave Ramsey's, financial advisors, they're all taught and trained to teach you to do it from an accumulation mentality, right? So you got to accumulate money. Give you an example. I mean, I would teach people, say you get up to $1 million, right? You're now a millionaire if you save
right.
up in those mutual funds up to $1 million. The problem is that now a good financial advisor will say, do not pull out more than 2 or 3% a year, because of inflation and everything else. Your
Right.
money will last. Well, think about that. $1 million to live on $20,000 or $30,000 a year.
It's not, it's not good.
You're broke. You're
Yeah.
a broke millionaire. You're living below the poverty level as a millionaire, where even in the simple passive streams of income, right? Even if you got paid 10% a year only, and I know with Airbnb you can do a lot more, and flipping you can create a lot more wealth that way
Mm-hmm.
too. Active investing you can make way more than the passive 10-12% a year stuff. But
Exactly.
even 10% a year on $1 million is 100,000 a year.
It's
That's a
great.
massive difference in lifestyle.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. So you've mentioned it a couple times, you were a financial advisor. You don't believe in the financial advisor side of things for a number of reasons, but I've got a lot of friends of mine who they flip, they own rentals, and they also say, hey, it's good to just have, stocks and bonds and all this kind of stuff to diversify yourself. What do you say to that?
Well, I, I kind of believe that I go with a Mark Cuban quote
Okay.
is diversification's for idiots. Now here's the thing. I like a balance, right? I don't believe in absolutes because
Okay.
you can always find exceptions, right? But here's what I see. I like diversification can be good to a degree,
Mm-hmm.
but I believe that most people are overly diversified.
Mm-hmm.
And they're usually overly diversified into not being diversified, right? So like a mutual fund, for example, is a paper asset. And they'll
Mm-hmm.
say, well, I'm diversified in stocks and bonds. Well, those are both paper assets. You might think you're in like 500 different things between your different funds, but the truth is you're still in a paper asset. If the market goes down, you're toast.
Right.
Like we saw that last recession, bonds and stocks both went down. So it was not a good time to be in any of those things.
Right.
And here's the thing, like, it's like people say, hey, should I buy Bitcoin? Like, you can't control it. You have zero control over that kind of market, right? You're gambling. You're not an investor. You're a gambler. If you want to put a teeny bit in there just because you think it's fun to play in, great. But your bulk of your assets and wealth should be in things you can control, which is why I personally love real estate. I love my business, of course, because I can control that. But real estate, I mean, why would I invest in somebody else's company in the stock market versus my own?
Exactly.
Right? Like, especially if I can own and control and make more money. So give you an example. This first hit me when I was a financial advisor. It was after I got a lot of confidence and I started thinking I was awesome. I was somehow smart in my
Absolutely.
20s. And I remember I went to my brother-in-law. My brother-in-law came from a family that built their wealth through car dealerships, right? In fact, they even sold their dealerships off for millions of dollars to the guy that owned the Utah Jazz Arena.
Oh, cool.
And so they're like, hey, we get it. And so I finally had the confidence to say, hey, we should talk about the stuff that I know about money. And so I went to him and presented, gave him the whole thing about, hey, look, since 2000 BC, the market's averaged this, and all this stuff, right? And after I was done, he's like, okay, that's a good presentation, Chris. Let me ask you a question. If I give you 10 grand, you're saying you could make me 12%, right? I'm like, well, I can't guarantee anything because there are no guarantees in the
Right.
market. Past performance not indicative of future results, as they'll always say. I'm like, but yeah, that's been the average forever. And he's like, okay, so 12%, that's $1,200 a year. But Chris, I can take 10 grand. I can take that and I go buy a semi truck,
Mm-hmm.
put a down payment on a semi truck for 10 grand, turn around, sell it a few months later, make a $20,000 profit.
Yep.
So Chris, why would I invest my money with you? And scrambling around looking for all the different answers in my head, I said, well, you should be diversified. You should all your eggs in one basket.
Mm.
Putting your money in business is risky, right? Ironic that I had a business telling him it's risky. He should put his money there. And that's the thing is like they tell you, yeah, you should put your money here. Really what they're saying is invest with me because I won't make a dime if you invest in your own stuff. And
Mm.
that's why you cannot trust financial
Right.
advisors or any of that traditional advice because they're all essentially their pocketbooks are tied
Mm-hmm.
to that, which is why I had to leave.
Absolutely. Well, I think there's two differences in what you're talking about there. And by the way, that's an awesome story because it's so true and reigns so true with so many different types of investments and types of businesses. But
Mm-hmm.
you were basically offering this passive opportunity, and then your friend came back with this opportunity to be a little bit more active and make more money. And I
Yeah.
think that there's this like misconception. I sit down with people a lot today who are seeing, my content, seeing my videos and think, oh, I want to go get a part of these deals with Kyle. And like, I've got $5,000 laying around. I bet he can turn it into 15. And it's like, no, that's a passive investment. When you're passive, you need to be okay with that 8, 10, 12%. But if you've only got $5,000 to invest, you need to find an active way to go, and whether it's investing in yourself, investing in, like you said, some sort of tangible thing that can create for you a bunch of money by you being active in it. So
Yeah.
I bring all this up and I'm seeing you shaking your head like, yes, yes, yes. So I already know you agree, but I guess the question I'm getting at here is, at what point do you think that someone has X amount of dollars ready to invest? Do they start looking at, hey, I should look at this as a passive investment versus spending this money actively? I know that's a tough question, but is there any sort of tangible advice that you have for that?
Yeah, a lot of it deals with time and energy, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I know you have systems to help with that, which is awesome because they need that. But it depends on your bandwidth, because I have some clients that are just so maxed out, like time wise, they're like, I have nothing left. It's like, okay, great. Maybe if you've got an extra, 100 grand, cool. Maybe we can make 10 grand a year off of that or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
That will help start the process to buy your time back. But then I get other people that even though they work full time, they still got a little bit of energy. Like I got one client right now that he did some turnkey properties. He bought and he's making about a few grand a month off his turnkeys. But now he's like, okay, my phase two for him, he's like, for him, his phase two is doing Airbnb rentals, right?
Great.
He's like, hey, I could take 20, 25 grand and I could buy one single family home, put a down payment on a single family home. But he's like, I also know that with 20 grand, I could get 2 doors on the Airbnb side and start basically leasing, then subleasing them out, right?
Exactly.
Once he realized he didn't have to buy the property, the whole world opened up. He's like, crap, like I can make way more money than what I'm doing on this turnkey side, which again, nothing wrong with the turnkey because it's awesome. Like it's good. It's hands off. You have property managers and whatnot. But once he started to learn the system and get educated and then become what I call active investor versus passive investor, that's where the bigger money is. And so I don't think there's really a dollar amount because he had plenty of money to keep doing more passive investments. But for him, it was that okay, if I want to spend time and energy on something that's becoming like a business, even if it's part-time, what is something that I think would be so fun that I wouldn't mind doing it? And in fact, even if I could quit my job, I would think this is still fun anyways. This is like play. It's not like I bought myself another job. It's something I actually really enjoy doing.
So what I'm gathering, and this is the first time you and I have really had a conversation. So what I'm really gathering here, Chris, and correct me if I'm wrong, is you really help people to take this idea of passively investing, taking that same amount of money, finding something they're passionate about that they would do no matter what, and basically creating this money machine that still is one of these days going to become completely passive for them because you're helping them create these systems. Am I getting that correct?
Exactly. Yeah. Most people will usually come to me. They're like, they just want only passive and that's it. Right. They don't want to learn any new system. They just want to find good passive investments. But I always encourage people that if they want to accelerate their goals faster, man, if you can find something that's active and you actually enjoy and you've got the bandwidth to do it, do it.
That's
like
awesome.
Find something that would be fun. Cause I mean, take it from a guy who's been financially independent twice, right? And had to ask himself, now I don't have to keep working. What would I spend my time doing? Right. And what gives my days meaning, something that's a real purpose. It's a great way to figure out like, hey, is this the kind of investing that I think would be fun? Even if I didn't make a ton of money, I think this is just play for me. And I'll tell you, in my experience, every time somebody does something that's almost like play for them, like it's just fascinating,
right,
they'll get better and better. They'll go deeper and deeper and they'll make more and more money doing that anyways.
I love it. I love it. And that I can vouch for from a personal standpoint. It wasn't until I found real estate and Airbnb that I really was like, okay, I'm in love with this. So I know exactly what you're saying. Before we kind of log off here and I give people the opportunity to reach out to you and connect with you, I would like to know, is there any, someone's listening to this right now and they're saying, man, I really want to get into investing of some sort, whether it's in myself, an active investment or a passive investment. Do you have any golden rules or things that you teach that you would like to be able to share with our audience right now?
I'll tell you, the biggest thing you got to do is reject what the majority is saying. Because the truth is the majority is broke, right? I mean, they're not financially savvy. They're not financially free. Even if they look like they make good money, they usually don't have something that creates real lifestyle and freedom, that quality of life, right? It's very dependent upon them having to keep working their tails off. And I think the biggest thing to look at is one, like you've probably got resources available that you don't realize. I mean, look at places like, have you been packing money into your 401k, getting that match? Every time I run it against real estate, you cannot hold a candle. Like real estate will kick the crap out of a 401k with 100% match day in and day out, especially when you're factoring in taxes and everything else. And especially when it comes to income, cash flow, which is ultimately why you'd be saving in a mutual fund anyways, right?
Right.
That's the real thing. And if you want to retire before you're 59 and a half, don't throw it in something that's going to slap your hand with a 10% penalty for touching it before then. That's dumb. Makes no sense. So get your money. Possibly one of the best things you do is not put money in the 401k, put it into an account where you go do these alternative type of investments that you probably have more control over. And it's even safer than gambling in a market you have no control in, right? I think that's one big one is rejecting everything you've been taught, rejecting the whole, hey, with compound interest, it doesn't matter. It's about acceleration and speed and cash flow, not accumulation and stagnant ups and down markets that you have zero control in. There's no freedom when there's no control, and there's no freedom where you can't create real cash flow.
Cash flow and control. I love it. That's good, man. And ignoring what other people are saying. I can't remember the quote, but it's something to the effect with Warren Buffett of like, if everyone's do it, run away. And if no one's doing it, run towards it. Something like that. You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, exactly. I think it's like, pretty much, yeah. You run the opposite direction where everybody else is running, right? Like when there's people in your like from your high school or whatever saying, hey, we should invest in this. That is exactly the time not to invest in it.
Exactly. And I'm sorry if you can hear a car alarm going off outside, but that's happening right now.
They're just going off and letting the alarms blaze. Like, this is true.
This is the best advice I've ever gotten. So, there you go. So Chris, before we log off here, how can people get connected with you, and how can they continue to learn from you?
Yeah, by all means, follow my podcast, The Chris Miles Money Show. Great education stuff on there you can get for free, right? If you're like, hey, I have some questions or I want to know about my own situation, you can go check out my website, moneyripples.com, where there's also some good education on there too. But you can also message me through there and just say, hey, Chris, like, what do you see with my situation? What do you think? That kind of thing. So.
Perfect, man. Well, hey, thank you so much for being on the show. Thank you for bringing so much value to our audience and a money perspective from someone who's been there and done that. Really appreciate you helping us to conquer real estate investing today, Chris.
Absolutely. It's been my pleasure. Thanks, Kyle.
All right. The show notes for this one, fearlessflipping.com/Chris Miles. And if you're on the YouTube channel, you can see that right behind me. If you're on the podcast, once again, fearlessflipping.com/Chris Miles. Very easy. Make sure you go check out his podcast too. You're just listening in the car, getting your money blueprint right in your head. That is the biggest thing. He has so many good tips, tricks, ideas to help you make sure that you're just on the right mindset with what money is and what the value is and what it can do for you in your life. And again, I think the biggest thing that he talked about, not having a scarcity mindset, having an abundance mindset, having an offensive mindset when it comes to money. And that's going to be how it helps you to grow. So one more time, fearlessflipping.com/Chris Miles for those show notes. Now go out there, conquer real estate investing. We will see you next time.